Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Evgenia Marquardt, and I'm the program coordinator of the Policy Leader Fellowship Program at the School of Transnational Governance in Florence at the European University Institute. I hope that you can all hear me well, and you can also see me as well as the slides that I'm sharing. Warm welcome to everybody to this information webinar about our program. We hope that we'll be able to answer some of your questions and present you more details about our program. I'm going to briefly go over the agenda for this session. So very quickly at the beginning, we're going to cover some of the housekeeping points and introductions. And then you will hear for about half an hour from us about the program, the requirements for the application, and also you will have a chance to hear from a current fellow who is here this afternoon with me, Nicolas. You can also see him already on the screen. And then for the last half an hour, you're going to have a chance to ask us questions about everything that was presented to you, but also any outstanding details or clarifications that you might have. So without delving deeper into the agenda, let me just remind you that this webinar is being recorded. So you don't need to worry about taking notes because all of the participants will receive a recording of the session a few days after. This will also be uploaded to the STG's YouTube channel, so you're able to go back and view any of the information that you might have missed. I also mentioned to you that in the last half an hour, there will be a Q&A session, which will be live. But if during this presentation you have any questions, you're welcome to already start using the Q&A box to ask these questions. And together with me, there are other colleagues who are going to answer your questions as we go along. So please feel free to type them in the Q&A. I specifically ask you to use the Q&A and not the chat box. This is going to help us to moderate the questions in a more efficient way, as I know there are quite a few of you joining us this afternoon. And when you ask a question, please do write your name and your country. But if you want to remain anonymous, you can also pose your question anonymously. And the final note on the housekeeping, we are not going to be addressing any of the IT-related questions. So this refers both to the application to the program. So if you have any issues with your login, your password, the page is not opening correctly, please address those questions directly to the IT support officer. And the contact information is indicated on the application portal. So please, we're not, unfortunately, IT experts, so we're not going to be covering that today. And finally, if you have any issues with the Zoom webinar, you cannot hear me well or see the slides, we're not able to help you individually, unfortunately, please try closing your Zoom application and rejoining the webinar again, if that is the case. And finally, the most exciting part is the quick introduction of our team. So you're hearing from me. I'm the program coordinator for the PLF, so the Policy Leaders Fellowship Program. You also see on the screen Alice Pineschi and Rami Hatoum, who are my teammates, and they are going to be behind the screen, literally today, answering your questions in the Q&A, and they're involved in the day-to-day operations of the program. And last but not least, you see Professor Claudio Radelli, who is the academic coordinator for the program, and he will actually be taking the floor from now on and start us off with the presentation of the program. Thank you so much, Claudio. Over to you.
Thank you, Evgenia, and hello to everyone. I will briefly introduce the program, the Policy Leadership Fellowship Program. The first thing I want to say is that it's a program in residence, so you will be in Florence. It doesn't mean that you cannot go on a mission, to a conference, to an event, but most of the time you will be in Florence. We also target mid-career professionals. That means people who have experience of shaping public policy in different ways, from inside government, with advocacy, through the media. That's what we're looking for. Mid-career people who see themselves as policy professionals. The program is not for academics. We are not rejecting an application from someone with a PhD, but we're not looking for the number of publications, whether you're writing a book or whether you're coming to Florence to develop a PhD application. In all of these cases, we will not give a high ranking, we'll probably reject your application. So although academic background may be very useful, this is not an academic program. It's a program, and I move to the next point, based on peer-to-peer learning. You will have essentially plenty of space and plenty of time to collaborate and to co-create information, dissemination, even research. Again, we're not against social scientific research, but this is not why you are here in the first place. You're here, I'll just say something that is coming up later on as well, to develop an individual work program with a policy orientation, with a policy focus. There could be a reform, a challenge, a plan, a policy tool, a policy body, like a regulatory body you want to work with, or it could be a transnational issue that you want to tackle from an original point of view. The network dimension is very important because essentially you will be here for months in a network dimension with many other people in your cohort, but also students, senior visiting fellows, professors, researchers, postdocs. So just to give you an idea, the School of Transnational Governance in Florence is around 240 people, including students, of course. But then we also have a Department of Law, a Department of Economics, a Department of Political Science, a Department of History, and the Robert Schuman Center. So although by international standards, this is not a university with 50,000 people, you will be surrounded by a network of people working on research, often with a policy orientation. As a member of a school and the European University Institute, you will have some citizenship status. That means not just going to the library and having a card, but really feeling part of the community. The policy leaders have their own representative in the bodies that govern our institution. You will have your rights to speak, to access, including the right to shape your work plan and what you're doing as a collective entity, as well as responsibilities that one I already said is to be in residence, and then others that we will discover as we go through, including participating in the events that you or other fellows organize throughout the year. Maybe we can go to the next one. Okay, so this is a bit of a repetition, but since the question crops up most of the time, is the program fit for you? Well, as I said, don't do that. Don't apply if you want to pursue a postdoc fellowship, to publish 3 articles or to turn your PhD into a book. It is not a gap year. Now, I'm not inside your mind. You may see it in a way as a gap year between something and something else. Let's say that we don't know that, but our focus, if you come for a second inside our mind, is to help you to grow professionally, to reconsider what you've done, and to improve in terms of skills, tools, and ways of thinking. You will have, as I said, a unique access to the European University Institute, which is, as I said before, in itself a global network of professionals and university researchers. There's a lot of regional research that goes on here, from climate, migration, regulation, political economy, crisis management, health, artificial intelligence. So we are really a research-oriented university. In order to meet the goals of the program, some people always asking about what is this top-down heavy direction? Well, there is no top-down heavy direction. We work with policy professionals with 10 years of experience, at least, and therefore we count on their self-motivation and drive. We are here to help. But for us, what's important is that you deliver on your implementation plan, on your work plan. So there are no exams, no final tests, but rather a constant progression, and we monitor progression in order to assist you in the next step. What about the skills development? You will be able to attend different training courses, workshops, and I would say that in general, the foundation of everything you will learn is the social sciences, right? But there are also many opportunities to pick up skills with a more professional component, from using policy tools to visualization, use of artificial intelligence to map stakeholders, etc., etc. And the skills development is carried out at a pace that you somewhat choose. So you're not coming here to take courses Monday to Friday, quite the opposite. There will be some moments where you are taught, many moments where you work with the other fellows and therefore go back to peer-to-peer learning, and moments where you attend conferences and events without picking the certificate at the end of a 2-hour presentation, but rather opening up your peripheral vision and picking up skills that are relevant for public policy analysis and public policy influence and advocacy. Maybe it's time to stop here and move on with some more information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudio. And I hope this gives you a quick insight into the philosophy, let's say, and the vision for this program and who it's designed for. But we can answer more questions in the Q&A part of this webinar, and also feel free to use the Q&A box if you have anything relating to what Claudio just kindly presented for us. So my task is next to give you a quick dive into what are the different components of the application, and probably highlight the ones that you might overlook just by looking at the list of documents that you submit. Repeat the information that is already provided on the call for applications pages, but rather zoom in on the parts that we see as the most important. So very briefly, of course, this is an online application process. Do not email anything to us, as unfortunately we cannot consider applications submitted by email. And the deadline is on the 25th of January, 2024, so soon in the new year. We encourage you to register early on the platform because that triggers the request to your referees, but also allows you to see the application in its entirety, so you get a chance to evaluate how much time it's going to take you to complete it. You can see the list of the documents that you will be asked to provide, and I want to stress the reference letters' importance. And these reference letters are submitted directly by the referees. So they do not send them to you as an applicant, but they're provided a link where they can upload the reference letter directly on the platform of the EUI. And there is a slightly longer deadline for the referees of the 31st of January, because we understand that sometimes it might be tricky for very busy people to submit the 2 letters that you require. And the last point I want to make on the different components of the application is about the motivation letter and the work plan. So the motivation letter, you can think of this as a cover letter for your application, is really important because that is where the selection committee looks to understand why is the program right for you and why in this specific moment. Okay, so we really want to understand what difference is it going to make to you professionally to be given the opportunity to complete the PLF program. And then I want to also mention very briefly the work plan, which creates a lot of anxiety in many applicants because there is not a specific template that you're asked to complete. It's quite flexible. And I think that is a reflection of the program as a whole, because we want to make sure that while there is structure and a framework that we provide to the fellows in the program, it also is tailored to each one of you. So the work plan should also speak and this should also answer, I should say rather than speak, answer the question that you might have on your mind. So this is something that you have encountered in your work, or just something you've been grappling in for a while, and you want to take the time to work on it. So this is individual work plan. So you structure it and you present it in the way that you see it to be described in the most clear way. Here, think about any applications for research projects or development projects. You always have a summary, a clear title that describes in a very brief sentence what the work is about, but also a clear objectives, outputs, methodology, how you're going to go about getting to the end results. What will be the outputs at the end of your fellowship? What you're hoping to present. So these are some of the questions that you need to make sure that are addressed in your work plan. I suggest that once you have it ready, you give it to a colleague, a friend, or a relative, and you say, does this make sense? Do you understand what I want to do during my fellowship? And if they are able to tell you clearly what their sense is, you've done a good job at presenting that. And finally, the work samples are optional. And I just want to highlight that optional means do not stress yourself out if you don't have a work sample. These are there just to ensure that if you have already produced work previously that can support your profile and your candidacy, that you have a space to provide those for the selection committee. However, your application will not be graded down if you don't have additional work samples to include. The components that you see above are absolutely sufficient for us to continue with evaluation of your profile. Very quickly on the eligibility and selection criteria. So the first 3 points are the eligibility criteria that you see on the screen. So if you don't meet these criteria, your application will not be considered and will not be shortlisted. And this is something that Claudia already mentioned earlier. So this is a program for mid-career policy professionals. The good news is that this is very broadly defined. So we're looking for individuals in politics, in their governments, civil service, from non-governmental organizations, international organizations, also private sector, and other industries where you might be involved in influencing policy and in policy making. So as long as you can explain in your curriculum and in your work plan your relevant experience and how you've worked in your specific policy area, we are going to consider you eligible. We do look for applicants with a minimum of a bachelor's degree and 10 years of relevant work experience. And this is a strict requirement. We have rejected candidates who have lower than 10 years of work experience. And when it comes more to the selection criteria, we'll look for clear motivation. So this is what I mentioned before. You need to describe well in your application why you above other people should be given the opportunity to do this program, what difference it's going to make to you. And this is something that can come across your entire application, not only in the cover letter or motivation letter. And of course, we'll look at the work plan because it needs to be very well focused. Ideally, it links to the work that is being conducted at the School of Transnational Governance. So we hope to see that you have looked at our faculty members, you have looked at the different projects and programs that are part of our school, and you have at least envisaged or imagined how you could work with them, what you can learn from them, and also what you could bring to our school. So this is something very important, is the reciprocity. So you're not only going to join the School of Transnational Governance to benefit from the resources and the academic environment and the conferences, but you're also here to bring your expertise. And we really want you to shine. We want to make sure that you have a chance to share that with us, with our students, with other fellows in the program. So we need to understand what is the focus of your work. And finally, I mentioned, of course, the diversity. There is no nationality restrictions to apply for this program. It's truly global. We look for people from all around the world, and we want to make sure that that is reflected in every cohort that we select. So we do make some choices based on making sure that we have a well-rounded group of fellows joining us every year. I'm going to carry on in the interest of time, but please do ask questions if you have any in the Q&A. Very briefly, the timeline, as I mentioned, the deadline is on the 25th of January. an important part of the application process, of the selection process, is the interview. So we do interview all the shortlisted candidates. So by the end of March next year, if you have not received an invitation for a virtual interview for the program, it is very likely that you have not been shortlisted. Sometimes there have been cases where interview invitations have been sent later to additional candidates, but it is quite rare. So if by the end of March, early April, you have not heard from our team with an invitation, it is likely that your application wasn't successful in this round. And by the end of April, every single applicant who has submitted an application will hear from us with the answer whether they have been listed as a finalist, as a reserve list candidate, or they were rejected. If you are placed on the reserve list, we make sure that we inform the reserve list candidates at the latest by the end of June if they will be coming to attend the program starting in September. So to make sure that you have enough time to apply for visa if you need to travel to Italy, and also to make any personal arrangements. And that is November for candidates who might be interested in starting the fellowship in February for the 5 months. And now I'm going to very quickly answer a couple of questions that are often on the applicant's mind if they are offered the fellowship and they're selected to join our program. And then I'm going to hand over to Nicholas. One of the questions that we often hear is whether I should apply for 5 or 10 months. And the answer is nobody can decide that except for yourself. So that is really dependent on your personal circumstances, whether you're able to take a 1-year leave from your current job to come to Florence, whether your personal and family situation allows you to travel to another country for almost 1 year, or is the 5-month option a more flexible option for you, so you can bring your child with you or your family members. Maybe your employer is not willing to give you leave for longer than 5 months. So it is really driven by your situation. It is not easier to get a 5-month fellowship than a 10-month fellowship. So do not worry whether you need to choose one option or the other. It doesn't influence our decisions in the selection. However, we do make sure that the work plan that you propose does correspond to the duration that you are suggesting to do the fellowship for. So if your work plan is too ambitious for 5 months, you're likely not going to be offered the fellowship. The same goes if it's not focused, it's too vague, we're not sure how you're going to spend the 10 months, you might not be selected amongst the finalists. So do make sure that you choose the duration that is appropriate for your situation, but also for the work that you plan to do if you are selected to be part of the program. Very quickly, and Claudia also mentioned this, it's a residential program, so you have to come to Florence, which is not a bad thing. It's a beautiful place to spend some time, and we expect you to be around the school. We expect you to interact with the other fellows, with our team, and the community at the EUI. So just a word of warning, it is very, very difficult, and I should say it is impossible to combine this fellowship with a full-time job. So you cannot continue working at full-time rate and do this program. You can probably maintain some consulting relationships with your past organizations or new organizations that you can do at your own pace on your free time. But please be warned that it is a full-time equivalent requirement to really live this experience and make the best out of it. And here, I will just say that when you're planning your timeline for your work plan, you can think that at least 2 days per week you might be spending on Policy Leader Fellows specific activities. Maybe about 1 day you would want to allocate to participating in live of the EUI and different conferences and events, and about 2 full days you could allocate to focusing on your project. So when you're preparing those timelines, don't be overly ambitious and think that 5 days a week, every week, you would be able to dedicate to delving into your project, because you have to keep in mind that there will be many other interesting activities, conversations, and events that you might want to be engaged in during your program. So I end here. The last question is, what does a week look like in life of a policy leader fellow? That often applicants ask, what is it going to be like if I choose to come to Florence? But I think there is nobody who can answer this question better than a current fellow. So Nicholas, I hand over to you. Please take your time.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. First of all, thank you to Eugenia, Claudio, and the team for inviting me to comment on my experience with in the program. It is such an honor and responsibility to share all the knowledge and main outcomes taken from PLF. I am Nicolás Azogan, current fellow to 2023-2024. I am here for 10 months. I am from Chile and I am working on cities climate finance, how cities can get funds, unlock resources to finance climate action. I started only 3 months ago, but such an intense, deep, and unique time. It would not easy to share all my experiences in 10 minutes. So that's why I will speak 11 or 12 minutes. I can summarize by saying that the PLF has been changing my life in a personal, professional, and an academic way, in a positive manner. It has been a remarkable, profound experience, a complete turning point for my professional life. I will divide my presentation into the following topics. First, about the life of PLF, again, a comment. Second, what is the dynamics among the different fellows, trainings and SDG talk, and engagement with the university and with the faculty, and at the end, a few tips for your application. So as Claudio and Evgenia say, this program is essentially self-paced, open, and flexible. After defining your project and goals, you decide what, when, and how to work, which is a very nice advantage. Also, it is normal to apply with a specific proposal, and then you can adapt or change it during the program. For me, that is fantastic because during these last 3 months, you will meet people, learn new trends, or be involved in different topics that will affect your project in a positive manner. Also, you will have access to various resources from people like academics, colleagues, master and students, to the library, conference, seminar, trainings, and so on. Plus, there is a lot, let's say, non-academic activities. In these 3 months, besides trainings that I will comment on later, I have been involved in a writing group, Italian lessons, tennis, walking tours. I am a mentor of a master's student. I did a presentation in a master's class. I participate as a panelist in a webinar. But sadly, I missed the workshop on how to make pasta because I was in Dubai attending COP28, also invited and supported by the university. So as you can see, you will be surrounded with so many activities and invitations to complement your life personally and professionally. Regarding the PLF group dynamics, for me, it's one of the most exciting things about the program is people. You will be part of a diverse cohort. You will share your life with people from different countries, backgrounds, experiences. As you can see in the picture, this semester we are 12. We're missing one, but we're 12 from 12 countries covering the 5 continents, which is, wow, it's amazing, it's fantastic. Also, different topics, as Claudio mentioned, from climate change, democracy, to digitalization in agriculture and banking, and to lethal autonomous weapon systems. So your brain is constantly learning new things. All the previous is increased because we have activities with the whole university, let's say with professors, researchers, master and PhD students, visiting scholar, and in particular, we share with the one program that I really liked. It was a Young African Leaders Program. It was a 3 months program during September to November, where we shared with 30 African leaders from 22 countries. For me, it was, again, a unique experience. And I could improve my project with them, and I increased my network, and now I am adapting my project to work with African municipalities. Regarding the dynamic, the first months, there are several welcoming and introductory activities. STG provides, here the team provides full support to have a deep understanding of the institution, and I really appreciate that. It helped me a lot to understand how to navigate inside the institution. And after September, as I began to say, we have like 1 day weekly fixed for PLF meeting, normally on Wednesday. And then we have like different days also to work on our projects or to participate in other activities. So there is not risk, but not risk, but you need to manage how to deal working in your project and also participate in the activities. But it's a very unique opportunity. Regarding trainings and SDG talks, I think one of the most substantial benefits of being a PLF is the high quality training that we receive constantly. There is a deep concern from the PLF team here to deliver training that can improve our skills, get new update knowledge, and connect us with the key actors in our field. For me, that is a privilege, it's a gift to receive all this quality training. For example, we had, as I think Claudio mentioned, also we had training on negotiation, public policy design, writing, public speaking. You will evaluate how is my public speaking after this presentation, and so on. And in addition, we had the opportunity to attend activities with former prime minister, in our case with the former prime minister of Finland, who is running for a president now, the former prime minister of Italy, and different like high-level politicians in Europe, and with a range of distinguished academics. In my topic on climate change, I receive technical support on climate and finance, and I am part of the climate cluster, where I can access different resources in the topic. Another beneficial initiative is the SDG talk. Each of us should deliver a talk per semester. It is an opportunity to show our projects, learn from our colleagues, and especially connect with others. In my case, I organized a panel about climate change with two young African leaders, a former PLF and a PhD student. And after the talk, a professor of the university approached to me and suggested that we can write an article together. Also, I had the opportunity to do an executive training on the European Commission, where we received training from Joan Manuel Barroso, the former Prime Minister of Portugal and former President of the European Commission. So you can see those are the kinds of examples that you can get from the range of activities that PLF offers, and it's only 3 months. So for me, every moment spent in the PLF program becomes an opportunity to learn and grow as a policy practitioner. And lastly, regarding engagement with the Florence School of Transnational Governance in the university, as I said before, the opportunities and connection that this institution offers are huge. I have to recognize that I didn't know a lot before about the university before applying. So if you don't know, don't feel bad. You can research. But however, being here, it's still a surprise for me by the high quality and excellent level of the academic community, a scholar, and my fellows, my colleagues. Also, you can access almost everyone you need to contact, especially in the European Union. Having that email at UI.eu is a strong tool that I am using widely and strategically. For example, let me share a short story. I was personally invited by the mayor of Florence to attend an international meeting of mayors of European cities because I met him at the opening ceremony of the academic year, where he gave a keynote speech. Thanks to SDG, I had the chance to participate in the conference, and I have private chat with the mayor of Paris, Barcelona, and Istanbul, among others. It is also important to remark that it is pretty easy to engage within the UI on the website, and I recommend you to visit this part. There is a section of people where you can see the bio and the email of each of us, from professors to master students, and connect with them. In general, all of us are open to talking and discussing new projects. Also, as I said before, there are literally activities every single day where you can meet new people or connect with your interests. And to conclude, you need to think all of us, all of these over the umbrella of the unique and magical city of Florence. That's why I chose this background. Here is El Duomo, Ponte Vecchio, and so many things. So as Italians say, mamma mia. Living in Florence in Italy is also an extraordinary experience. Our school is located in the Medici Casino of San Marco. We were surrounded by frescoes. Michelangelo started his work in one of the rooms that we work. So you really feel a special vibe, a unique sensation when you walk in the street. You need to think that we walk in the same street where Da Vinci, Machiavelli, Botticelli, they walked years ago. So it seemed for me simply fantastic. And sadly, I don't have time to talk about Italian food. You mean pasta, tiramisu, gelato, spread. we will talk later about this. And finally, to conclude about that, I will give like 4 tips, maybe remark something that Claudio and Genia said about your application. First, I think it's really, really important to read the program description, selection procedure, and criteria in detail, like set time to really understand the purpose and goals of the program. And I think you need to be honest in deciding whether the program fits your needs or not. Second, I think also Genia said, spend time in developing your work plan. The website clearly describe what you need to include, fill out all of them in a clear, concrete, and practical manner. There is no fixed form, so use your creativity and present the best work plan possible. I think that is a very good opportunity that is not a fixed form to fill it. And do it with time so you can receive feedback from friends or colleagues. I did that. I did it with time, and I received feedback from 2 or 3 colleagues. Third, also, as Claudia and Genia say, PLF is not only about receiving, it's only about giving. So I recommend answering at least 2 questions, either in your motivation letter or on your work plan. So what do you want to gain from the program? And second, what are you planning to offer to the program? How will you contribute to SDG and the EUI? I think if you answer these 2 questions, you will clarify if the program fits for you or not. And lastly, as I said before, people is one of the most essential things of the PLF. So spend time looking at the website to see who can help you with your project, how and why they can help you with your project. I didn't reach out to them before the application, but I was clear about who and why they could be potential partners for my goals. So that's all from my side. Thank you again for your time. I hope I can be able to communicate my motivation and happiness with the PLF. My best wishes to your application. I'm happy to answer a question later. Over to you again.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. I think this is very valuable to hear a testimonial from somebody who is in the program right now. As much as we try to describe the different components, it can never be the same as hearing from another person who went through the entire cycle from application to arriving in Florence and participating in the program. Thank you so much for this. So next, we're going to move to answering some of your questions that I have been seeing in the Q&A box. I see that everybody is actively typing. So we're going to take the next 20-25 minutes to answer some of the questions live. And then there are also questions being answered directly in the chat. So I'm going to read a few that I see here on the screen, and we're going to discuss them in the order that they have arrived. One question is about the reference letters. So are there any points that need to be covered in the reference letters and are necessary to be included in the reference letters? This is a question from Laura or Laura. So I would like to answer that directly to say there is no specific guideline that you should give to your referees. I think it is most important that they know you personally, of course. They have worked with you in a professional capacity. So I do not recommend asking friends or former fellows that you might know. So this should be somebody with whom you've engaged in a professional manner. And they should talk about the criteria, as Nicolas said, that the program is looking for. So your ability to be an independent person to deliver your work plan, your expertise in the focus area in which you would like to deliver your fellowship project, your ability to be a member of a team. It is very important to work well with the other fellows and other members of our community. So these are some of the things that the program is offering. So it is important that your referees, of course, speak about your qualities in relation to the program. So I hope that you take some time to describe to the people to whom you're asking for reference letters the same things that I've mentioned before, why you would like to do this program and what specifically attracts you to it. So I hope I answered that question. We also have a few questions here about counting the years of work experience, and I can also address some of them because this is the job that Rami, Alice, and myself do when we look at the applications. And I see Rupam Sharma is asking, are internships during a professional degree counted? And would a year spent in completing a postgraduate degree be counted towards the 10 years? So I want to say that we count years of completing PhD degree as professional experience, not a master's degree. So this is important to clarify. We also count internships that you have completed towards years of professional experience, but not volunteer experience. So I think there was another question about volunteering and so on. So this is important to clarify. So if there were internships that contributed to your development as a professional in the specific policy area in which you have worked in the past or are working now, those will be considered as work experience. Sometimes those are very important before entering in a specific position. However, not volunteer experience. There is a question from Sushila as well about carrying on with own projects while taking the fellowship or designing collaboration. I'm not sure, Sushila, if you're talking about additional projects besides the fellowship work plan that you will propose, or projects that are outside of the university. So when it comes to collaborations within the university, I think Nicolas mentioned a little bit about this, that we really encourage you to have an open mind when you arrive to see who are the other fellows in your group working on topics that might be relevant or related to what you're interested in, who are the students in our school, who are the postdoctoral researchers, the faculty members with whom you could potentially collaborate. We really, really encourage that within our school, but also across the EUI. Okay, when it comes to consultancy work or additional projects outside the university or outside the scope of your fellowship, we want you to be careful not to overcommit yourself and then underdeliver. So I hope that that I've answered that, Sushila. There is also a question from an anonymous attendee who is asking about being an experienced academic. So would experienced academics whose work is primarily international and policy focused be excluded or ranked lower? So Claudio, maybe you could answer this question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't think the scheme is appropriate for someone who is an academic, and most academics in the social sciences target policy issues. So they may be writing also reports for organizations like the European Commission or United Nations on policy, but it's not that it's wrong, it's just that this is not the program for them to target. And I would suggest instead thinking about visiting us as a visiting fellow or senior visiting fellow. Obviously, there is no scholarship for that, but the scholarship is really to increase the skills and the capacity to shape policy of those who work in the policy domain. If you already have a job at the university and you're a lecturer writing on public policy, analyzing public policy, even acting as a consultant, I would not consider this scheme appropriate. You will be ranked lower, since that was a question. That would be my answer. Not excluded, but ranked lower.
Thank you, Claudia. There is a question from Sandeep, who's also asking about how experience is calculated, and I hope we answered that, but also about deliverables during the program. So, Nicolas, maybe you could talk a little bit about the deliverables that you envisaged as part of your project, and also have those changed, and what you feel is expected from fellows during the program. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question. As I said before, it's very flexible and open. I applied with a program specifically to work on Latin American cities. And during these 3 months, since as I mentioned before, I participate, I share a lot with African leaders. Now I switch a little bit and open my scope also to include Africa. And that's what changed about the scope. And second, my project was about to create a handbook to help mayors to raise money to get funds to finance climate action. But during this chat with mayors and I participate in different conferences, I changed now, and I will create a website to gather all the financing opportunities for cities around the world to gather all in website and promote that with different measures. So this is a concrete example how, because I participate in different seminars, I talk with so many people, I met one master's student who will work with me, there is a change. So after that, I changed my deliverables, and I have a new timeline. But again, as Claudio also said, it's up to you. I mean, I didn't ask Claudio or Evgenia for approval of this timeline. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, you need to take advantage of your time and be aware about the different opportunities that the university, the city, the faculty offer.
Thank you, Nicolas. I think just to add to that there is a range of deliverables, as Nicolas presented with the example, that could be a policy brief, a policy paper, could be an academic article as a result of your work. But I think the example that Nicolas gave is very nice and very hands-on. So it went from a manual, a handbook to support raising funds to actually creating a web page. And we have had fellows in the past who have created podcast series where they presented the findings and the information that they have gathered during their projects, because they felt that that would be a format in which the results of their work could be best disseminated. So again, this is a decision that is up to the fellows, and each one of you would be an expert in your area to say, I think in the area where I work, creating a podcast is more effective to deliver the information to the, in this case, this was NGO professionals, right? So busy people, they do not have time to read, but maybe they commute and they would listen to a podcast. So this was a decision that a fellow made. Other people find that creating and producing a policy brief is an effective way to reach the right audience for whom that they would like to reach. So again, this should be based on your knowledge and your expertise in terms of deciding what the output, the most effective output should be of your work. And then the selection committee will look at your application as a whole and make a judgment whether that seems appropriate and whether you've convinced them of that. So thank you for that question. I think it's a very good question. I see another question from Lucy Matu asking about being a public health professional who is interested in policy development and advocacy in global health, and whether the program would be a good fit. I have to say that my answer would be it depends. At the School of Transnational Governance, we used to have a cluster research group specifically focusing on global health. Right now, we do not have a faculty member, a full-time faculty member working on global health issues, but only a part-time faculty member. There is a project within the School of Transnational Governance called Open to Health that is specifically focused on training public health professionals. And so in a way, that topic is covered, but it's not a major stream of work within our school. However, I encourage everybody who is interested in applying to the PLF to visit the EUI website, and you can browse easily all the academics, so the researchers, the faculty members, as well as research programs that are available at our institution, because it is not necessarily that within the School of Transnational Governance, you might find somebody working on a topic of relevance to you, but they might be based in the law department or in the School of Economics or at the Robert Schuman Center for Advanced Studies. So you should do a little bit of research to understand whether there is enough people with a profile with whom you would like to connect, with whose work you think could complement what you want to do. So even if you don't find somebody who's an expert exactly in the topic that you would like to work on, I think as long as you can imagine a support group of individuals whose work can feed into what you're doing, you can learn from them, because this is a very broad description of policy development advocacy in global health. If you can find other people whose work could be relevant for you, I think it would be worth considering to apply. But I want to just make sure that you know that within the School of Transnational Governance, there isn't a strong global health research group at this moment. So I hope that answers your question. We have another anonymous question asking whether European cultural policy related proposals are relevant to the program. I do not see many faculty members working in this field. I don't know, Claudio, if you would like to help me with this one.
I would say that in terms of policy areas, we don't discriminate against one specific policy or another. So the cultural policy issues are relevant as it depends on the how you address them, on the quality of your application. And if we go back to what Eugenia was saying, we may not have a professor there. We have an interest in higher education at the level of Professor Diane Stone, and also we have a postdoc Marie Curie fellow called Marina Cino Pagliarello. But we are not doing really one-to-one. So we may also widen our description of cultural policy to perhaps someone working more on history, on global governance. So the thing is that if you're really isolated here, it's not a great deal for you. And we're not a very large university, so chances are that you may not find a one-to-one correspondence. However, don't look just at the full-time professors in our school. Look at everyone in the departments, including economics, history, political science, Robert Schuman Center, economics. Consider using the keywords. We are not strict, but sometimes we don't rank high applicants who we think will be very isolated here. So if you do something that has no correspondence with what we're doing here, I think we're doing a service to you not to offer the fellowship, because there are other places where you may find a lab, a policy institute, half of the department working exactly on that, and you will be better off looking elsewhere.
Thank you, Claudia, for answering. I see there is a question from Yue Kao asking about a budget to produce outputs such as podcast, website, policy papers, and so on. So I think this is a very good question. Thank you, Yue, for asking that. So essentially, it's about resources available to fellows at the school. So the short answer to that, there is no budget. So the fellowship comes with a support grant for your living expenses. There's also additional allowances for family members that might have to join you for the program. But there isn't additional budget that you're given to manage to deliver your work plan. Now, this being said, there are many resources that the university has that are available to you as a fellow because you're a member of our community. And that goes from being able to access the library and the resources that the library has, to attending the events and conferences on behalf of the university and so on, to some support units that could support you with the production of your output. So there is a communications team within the School of Transnational Governance that can offer some support with comms, let's say, related work. When you write your policy paper, we have a freelance copy editor who can support to read through your drafts and give you feedback. There are writing groups that Nicolas mentioned where you share with your peers your writing and you can perfect the draft that you're going to submit, whether to the STG policy papers or a different publication that you might consider. So while there isn't a budget available for you to manage, and if you needed one, we would encourage you to, of course, apply for funding separately. There are many different support teams, including our team, that can provide you with help on some parts of your deliverables. So I hope that that answers. Yes, go, Nicolas.
I can add something like very concrete. Regarding the language center, we receive like feedback from our writing, from our papers or any essay that we are working on, and also for when I give my STG talk, I receive like a personal feedback before and after. That is super useful for my next talk, and given I think now I improve a lot in terms of public speaking. Also, we have like even though maybe you can write a policy paper, policy brief. We have an agreement, the university have an agreement with La Repubblica, which is a newspaper in Florence, when we can publish articles there. I am planning to do that, for example, and it's not like, let's say, a concrete a money resource, but you can get a lot of people reading your things. And also regarding podcasts, for example, one colleague of me, we are thinking to, like, two or three of us were thinking to do a podcast, and maybe we will gather resources together, like to do different podcasts. And lastly, again, since we can participate in conferences and seminars, we have visibility. So I participate in a cities conference, and I mentioned my idea of the website, and I received like 2 invitations for meetings to explain my project, and maybe receive money and receive support. So that is very, very, very concrete. Even though there is no funds like the school will give you, you can get. I think I would say quite, if you have the contact, you can get it.
Thank you so much for adding that, Nicolas. And I think that highlights that when you're here, you meet so many people, and there are so many interesting collaborations that might take place, and you get it's better when there are more than one mind working together. So there might be opportunities to also raise funds and do even bigger projects together. So thank you for giving that example. There are just a few more questions left, and we have about 5 minutes. So I hope that we'll be able to answer them. There is a question from Ruby asking whether volunteer work in governance and at international level count. I assume this is a question about counting volunteer work towards years of work experience. So I think if we're strict and we go by the word, volunteer work does not count towards years of work experience. However, if you're somebody who has been asked to be an expert on a committee advising a government on a specific topic, and you have dedicated a significant amount of time, and there is proof that you have contributed to, let's say, advising in this advisory capacity, I think we could count it towards work experience. However, this goes back to how you structure your CV and how you present your work experience. It is important that you explain to somebody who doesn't know you what the role was, what the time commitment was, and what were the main, what were the outputs, let's say, of this potential work that you define as volunteer. So if you can justify that it was equivalent to essentially holding a job, although it wasn't remunerated, of course, we will seriously consider that as part of your profile. But we just want to be careful that some of the volunteer work is very much driven by personal interests, and we cannot essentially, accept maybe a student who has volunteered for a few years based on their own interests, who would like to apply to the program. So, but of course, we understand when we look at the profile as a whole, how specific experiences fit into the career path or career trajectory of an applicant. So there is quite a bit of a common sense judgment that is applied when we look at your CV. So if you provide a good explanation, of course, we will consider a position that was serious enough towards your work experience. So Ruby, I hope that clarifies a little bit on that question. And then I think there's only one question remaining, so that would be excellent, as we will be able to finish right on the hour, from an anonymous attendee asking about working with the creative sector, in this case, theater performance, pushing for governance and equal representation of global history, specifically focused on African history and issues, whether this would be a good fit for the program. So I have to say that as Claudio mentioned before, we really want to encourage, and we don't want to discourage any policy area, but you need to make sure that if you come to the STG and the EUI, you have other people with whom you can collaborate, from whom you can learn, and that your work would fit into the broader context of the school. I think essentially working with creative sector, if I understand correctly, as a way to advocate for more equal representation and rights, it fits in the broader pool, let's say, a cluster of advocacy. We really encourage people to take creative approaches also to communicate policy issues. We have one fellow in Nicholas's cohort who is considering different art forms to communicate proposals for better policies for refugee inclusion, financial inclusion. So that is another example where they're using art essentially to communicate something that is policy relevant. So I think that, yes, the short answer would be you could apply to the program, and this could, the fact that you're working with the creative sector as a way to do advocacy does not disqualify you. If this is the means through which you would like to deliver the outputs of your work, would be absolutely fine with us. So I think at this point, I'm going to bring this to a close and thank everybody for being with us for the hour. Please, on the screen, you can see different ways to connect with the Florence School of Transnational Governance through different social media channels. There are various testimonials of other policy leader fellows on the YouTube channel that you can watch. We remind you, of course, of the deadline for applications on the 25th of January. It's important to highlight that it's 2 p.m. CET, so Italian time zone, not midnight. Please be mindful of that. We cannot accept applications after the deadline. Please make sure if you put effort into creating your application, you do submit it on time. If you have any questions that have not been answered during this webinar, please contact us through email at policy.fellowships@eui.eu. Please, we encourage you to use this email rather than directly contacting myself, Nicolas, Claudio, Alice, or Rami, because in this way we're able to handle all your queries in a much more efficient manner. So please do send your questions to policy.fellowships@eui.eu. So thank you so much, and we wish you a pleasant weekend.